Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to the June edition of Molten Music Monthly. I'm a little frazzled, to be fair. I've had one heck of a week dealing with secret stuff I'm not allowed to tell anybody about and that I had to do even though I got 1,000 million other things to do at the same time. It's crazy. It's new, completely new nuances of busyness that I've never experienced before in my life. So if I look a little bit harebrained, crazy, it's because I am. I'm on the edge, man. No, I'm alright. We're doing alright. Are you doing alright? It's kind of getting summery now. We've got a bleeding general election next week. That's exciting. I think. Could be. Maybe it will rescue us from ourselves and the future, which ultimately is going to be robot driven. Anyway, if we're going to get through this, I better get on with it, otherwise we ain't getting anywhere. So here are your considerations for this month's music technology, synthesizers, modular and other fascinating bits and pieces. Right, first up, Surface Pro. Now you know that I'm all about the Surface Pro. I mean, I know you see all this business, but leading up to this, before I got into all of this, I was very, very heavily into computers, and in particular the Surface Pro platform from Microsoft. I've got a whole website devoted to it, many videos talking about the Surface Pro and its touchableness, its creativity, the way you can connect things to it brilliantly. It will run DAWs, synth software, awesome. It's a great little platform. I got one right here. Look, Surface Pro 9. This is the what I thought was the latest one, but it turns out they've snuck a couple of others out without telling anyone. Oh yes, there are new Surfaces. There are new Surface Pros, and we probably need to talk about that. As I say, I get a little bit distracted sometimes by hardware, but I still have a lot of interest in software, and in particular the Surface Pro platform, which it's been good to me. I've been good to it. We feel we have this interesting symbiotic relationship. I don't know if you're supposed to feel about computers in that way, but anyway, so what am I saying? So what I'm saying is that there are new pros, and so I guess it kind of comes to me to have to tell you what that's all about, because I'm starting to get questions. People are saying, hey, should I get the new thing, right? Because is that going to be great for audio? And so that's got me going, what new thing, first of all, and then, oh, well, we'd perhaps better find out. So to bring this all together, what I'm saying is that I'm going to shortly, probably next week, do a proper singular video about the new Surface Pro, because it is, of course, complicated. But I thought I'd tell you a little bit about it now, because, hey, why not? Because I'm thinking about it. It's in my brain, and I'm just working through these things. So what has happened? Well, a couple of months ago, Microsoft snuck out the Surface Pro 10. Yes, as I say, this is the Surface Pro 9, which is what I believe to be the most up-to-date one. Oh, I'm sorry about all the noise as well out there. I can't do anything about it. Now, you would have thought that would have got more of a fanfare. You would have thought it would have been an exciting event, a big Microsoft thing, but it completely passed me by. There may well have been a party, but I didn't see it. However, my understanding of the Surface Pro 10 is that it's actually only available for business and education. So unless you have a Microsoft Business account or you run an educational department in some kind of school, you're not going to be able to get hold of one, which is odd. Now, the reason that they've done... No, I have no idea what the reason behind that is. Somebody thinks that's a good idea. So meanwhile, a couple of months later, so a couple of weeks ago, they released the Surface Pro 11. What is that about? Well, let me tell you. The Surface Pro 11 is actually the successor to the Surface Pro X. Complicated much? Yeah, I know, because obviously the Surface Pro 10 could also be a Surface Pro X, but they released a Surface Pro X a little while ago, while we were still on, I think, the Surface Pro 7 or 8. But the Surface Pro X was a different animal. The Surface Pro X was based on ARM architecture, so an ARM microprocessor and bits and pieces inside, not Intel, and so that required a slightly different version of Windows. And so they've released a successor to the Surface Pro X, which is the Surface Pro 11. My understanding is that this is the way Microsoft want to go, and it's the way potentially that the industry is going. They've shifted massively from Intel and all of the legacy that goes along with that, all of the compatibility, all of the ways we've tweaked and gotten into sorting out Intel-based, and AMD to a certain degree, based systems. All of that is being shoved aside for the shiny new ARM processors called Snapdragon X. So that is what's inside the Surface Pro 11. And that is also going to have to come with an ARM version of Windows, which means none of your usual software is going to work on it. Now, that's actually not true. What will happen is that it'll be able to go into some kind of emulation mode. It will be able to run your regular x64 or Win32 applications as an emulated app within ARM Windows. That doesn't sound awesome by any stretch. So in order to get things like DAWs and your software synths and plugins to run, ideally the manufacturer is going to have to come up with a new version. And we know how much developers really like that sort of thing. They love it. They can't wait just to have to come up with a brand new version of something. So we are left with the Surface Pro 11, which is running ARM Windows, which can't actually run anything. And also it's unable to run anything other than Microsoft certified drivers. So that means ASIO is out of the window. You can only run Wasapi drivers for your audio interfaces. So the impact of this is that you can no longer run Cubase on a Surface Pro natively, and you can't run it with the proper drivers, low latency real-time audio drivers, for your audio interface. Disaster. Potentially disastrous. The reality is that we don't actually know how well this is going to go or how well it isn't, and I would very much like to find out, but I can't just now because I don't have the money to buy a Surface Pro 11, and they're not about to give me one just at the moment. They've hinted they might be able to give me one down the line, when they've probably got some other ones back in from other reviewers. So there's potential down the line that I should be able to check this out. But the important thing in this ramble is just to get across to you that yes, there is a new Surface Pro 11. Yes, it looks amazing. Yes, it's all stuffed full of CoPilot AI nonsense. Is that exciting? No, probably not. However, I cannot tell you whether the Surface Pro 11 is good or not for audio software and music making. I suspect, like with the Surface Pro X, it's probably not. And you can go, I did a whole video on the Surface Pro X. You can go and check that out and you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Now, ARM Windows has got better, has improved. It now supports 64-bit apps as well as 32-bit ones. And so, yeah, we are a few years down the line, and inevitably the compatibility and the performance is going to be much better. But as far as I understand it, the processing within the Surface Pro 11 is extraordinary. And so that's a great thing. But can we use it? Can we get that power to run our plugins? That is the question. Microsoft is obsessed with AI. It just is. That's all it's interested in, really. And because of that, the Surface Pro 11 has all of this CoPilot stuff built in. As I understand it, it actually has a dedicated processor within the Surface Pro itself, purely to run CoPilot, purely to run the AI assistant, whatever the heck it is that's inside. And this includes having to hold on to about 128 gigs worth of large language models, or whatever it is, that brain, that stuff that AI uses, that has to be held locally on your computer as well, using up half the space of your machine. It's all bonkers. It's all crazy, I tell you. It's all crazy. I mean, obviously there's a lot of conversation out there about AI at the moment, and it's very, very, very interesting and pertinent. There's a danger that we snooze our way through this and we come out the other end and realise that none of us have got any jobs. Because we work in the creative industries, and AI absolutely has its eye on everything that we do. Now, this is not going to be a big AI rant or presentation, because I haven't looked into it anywhere near deeply enough, and there are brighter, more cleverer brains out there talking about it. But just to give you my my first thoughts, badly formed thoughts, is that technology has always been an enabler of music and musicians, but it's also been a dismantler. Everything it's given us, it's taken stuff away. So it gave us the piano and took away the orchestra. It gave us samplers and took away the poor old orchestra again. It gave us fabulous libraries of strings and symphonies, and again screwed over the poor old musicians and the orchestras. It gave us extraordinary plugins, destroyed manufacturers. It's given us cheap synthesizers and copied circuits, and destroys the legacy and the originality within it. It gives us plugins that destroy sound engineers, and it gives us bits of mastering software that kill off entire mastering houses of things. All the time, technology is enabling the lowest common denominator of musician, people like myself, who just want a little bit of help, And every time we get helped, every time we get enabled, every time the bar is lowered to allow more people in, which I'm a massive fan and advocate of. Every time we do that, skills are lost. Value is lost, potentially, one could argue. And so AI is yet another one of these things that's going to chip away at the expertise and the learning and the dedication that people put into crafting their art, because it will just all do it for you. Now, on one hand, that's brilliant. On the other hand, oh my goodness, what are we going to do when there's nothing left to learn? No people left with the ability to teach the AI anything. I don't know. I mean, I would love nothing more than an AI assistant that could edit my Molten Music Monthly video. That would be brilliant. That would save me a whole load of time, so I can then be more creative. See, that's the awesomeness of it. However, the flip side of that would be that if I was successful enough to the point that I could employ someone to edit my videos, then I would be providing employment for someone to do that, and to do that brilliantly. If the AI could do it, I wouldn't need to do that, and that person is no longer employed, potentially. So it's murky. It gives and it takes. And we're in this situation where it could be taking an awful lot if we're not very, very careful. And in our clamour to be given a lot, are we giving too much away? I don't know. I don't know. It's fascinating though, isn't it? Now, I could just talk about this for hours and we forget about all the other products that I've got going on down here. Does anybody else want to know about it? Well, I suppose I should get on. So there you go. Surface Pro 11. We're just going to wait it out for now. We're going to wait it out, but I'll do a proper video on it next week when I have my thoughts just tied together a little bit more. And then AI, yeah. Who knows? Moving on. Erica Synths have this crazy thing out. It's called Labour, which kind of reflects the idea that this is going to be a whole bunch of work. Or is it? We don't know. Now, what we do know is that Erica Synths are massively into their educational DIY, into the idea of teaching people and training people, humans, into building their own circuits and understanding circuits. We've been through together a whole load of builds of their EDU DIY series, and that was fantastic. I'd like to think I learnt a bit. I don't know that I learnt a huge amount, but I certainly learnt some, and that was really, really worthwhile. So this is like perhaps taking it to another stage. What you get is this breadboard, essentially. What's a breadboard? This sort of thing. You get a breadboard, but it's on or integrated into this device that provides you with a lot of the tools that you would need if you were trying to develop a circuit. So it has a built-in power supply, which you need obviously for creating your circuits. It has an interface section with a whole bunch of knobs and bits and pieces, so you can run those into the circuit that you're building without having to just sort of like hang them off the breadboard. I totally approve of that sort of thing. It does have an oscillator inside, a low frequency oscillator, as well as a pulse, triangle and sine wave oscillator. It's got an envelope generator and a button to trigger stuff with. It's got a control voltage source and also headphone outputs and that sort of thing. So the bare bones, essentially it's a tiny little modular system built into this thing, into which you can interweave your own ideas and circuits. How you put that actual circuit together, I have no clue, but I'm fascinated to find out. With a bit of luck, Ericsson's going to send me one, I think, and we're going to check that out, because I've got an idea. I've got an idea for a module that's been bubbling away inside me that's super, super simple, that I'd really like to see if I can work that out through this DIY platform. It's a brilliant idea. I love the fact that Gertz and Ericsson's keep pushing at this idea of breaking out the possibilities of designing and making your own modules. I think it's superb, and I should be there by now. I should be able to do this by now, and I still can't. So I'm an ideal candidate for this kind of shenanigans. Next up is the Make Noise Bruxa. Bruxa, I think I heard it was pronounced something different to that, but I'm going to go with Bruxa. Bruxa. It's a delay. That's nice. It's a delay stolen out of the Strega, which is their strange desktop wobbly wobbly synth thing. And this is the delay version of that stuffed into a Eurorack module and given a whole load of patch points in and out of itself. It has loads and loads of feedback lines within it, with filtering, I think. So you stuff something in it, and also the input sort of dynamically responds to the source material that's going in, so it will change the way the delay works based on the stuff that's coming in. That's fascinating. And anyway, it gets routed around all sorts of different places that then get filtered. So you have these multi-taps and these multi-paths of stuff being delayed and knocked around and cascaded and filtered and bits and pieces that all come then pouring out of the output. I think it's one of the most interesting. This does look interesting and could be right up my sort of alley. Propellerhead has come up with a new version of Reason. Very exciting. Reason 13. It's really up there with the numbers. Up there with the numbers of some of the other big boys. Oh yes. Reason, I will always have a soft spot for Reason. From Rebirth all the way through. I think it's been brilliant. The whole concept of this rack of gear, which you can completely ignore the entire sequencing side, the DAW side, the audio recording side, and just play with these machines, and then turn them round, and then replumb them and turn them back, and run little matrix sequencers, run the drum machine itself, running the drum machine as it is with a thing and a thing. It's just brilliant. I love all of that, and the DAW/mixer side that it's had probably since version 4, I think, is pretty decent too. Anyway, there's a new version, which means it must be full and packed full of lots of interesting stuff. No, not really. I mean, it's, any update is an update, and that's something. But as I've learnt, as I've refused to learn over the years, because this happens every time. Every time you get a big update, it's never quite as big as one thinks it could be. It's just a couple of bits here, a couple of bits there, and a few tweaks to the interface. That tends to be the general idea, but we always, at least I do, come into this idea of a new version of a DAW thinking, wow, this is going to be spectacular, and then ultimately are disappointed. And Reason is no different at all. I mean, it's great, and I love you, Reason, but a new browser? Cool. I hate it when they do that. A new browser usually means, I've got to work out how to find stuff again, because there's this desire to be helpful, and I can understand that. And we now have shed loads of library and folders and stuff all over the place. We probably need some kind of AI assistant to pull all of that together and to stick it into one place for us so that we understand it. But we're never going to get around to doing that, because that would actually be helpful. No, instead we're going to have a new browser in Reason where everything is tagged. Except none of your stuff's going to be tagged. Have you ever tagged anything in your life? You might have tagged your mother-in-law once in that photo you put on Facebook. That's probably the extent of it. But as for all of your drum samples and your other bits and pieces knocking around on your hard drives, no, nothing's going to be tagged. However, the browser is going to be all tag-based from now on. So the idea is that it's easy to find stuff because you've got categories. You can go, I want a bass, I want an acid bass, and I want it to be fruity and full of the colour purples. And so you click all of those on the categories, and there's a small list of samples. And that can be great. That can be awesome. It's just you've got to rethink the way that you're looking at things. Because with Reason, what I liked is the fact you've just got your list of stuff, your list of devices, and you've got presets for those devices. You know, it's not hard, is it? But I guess over time, because I don't tend to buy extra library and sounds and stuff, but I think if people do, then I imagine the library can get overwhelming, and so perhaps that's an easier way of looking at things. I don't know, because Propeller Head are saying it's all about speed. It's all about the speed, getting you faster into your projects, which presumably has been a problem with Reason. Maybe it has. I mean, in some respects with Reason, you've always got to build your studio first. That's kind of one of the flaws to some degree. But hey, there we go. Anything else? Yes, they've got a nice sort of poly virtual analog synth in there, which sounds great. You've got a really interesting delay called something. It was called something called Ripley, something like that, which I thought was an interesting name. I don't know if it has anything to do with what my mind goes to when I hear that word, but it's an interesting idea. And looks quite good fun. It's also got some utilities like some kind of stereo widening, a gain structuring thingamy-bob, and a side bump. Oh, it's more like that, isn't it? Side bump. You stick things in the side and it drops and then comes back again, giving you that throbbing sound into which you can squeeze a kick drum. That's the idea. Those are good things. I like the idea of having that. So there's that, a few tweaks. Oh, there's some interesting things in the sequencer itself, where you have kind of this information panel that gives you a lot of tools to apply to clips and things you're editing in the moment. And I think that all of that's quite nice. So very positive things, not a whole lot of stuff, but some positive things in there that I will be looking into at some point soon. Intellijel has a new Atlantis. This one's called the Atlantis with an X. Atlantix. Atlantix? I don't know. Maybe. How is it different? Well, the Atlantis was this lovely synthesizer voice and was one of the first things I saw that really inspired me in modular. It was watching a video, I think it was Modular on the Roof it was called, and this guy just seemed to have this one module and an effect, I think, and yeah, it's like a sequencer and the Atlantis, and ran the two together. It was probably the Metropolis. I am on it. I'm just hot today, on fire. Let's go. What? So yeah, and he did this fantastic set, just this one sound going around, and I was totally blown away by the simplicity and the awesome complexity all built into this particular little case of modular. And so I'm familiar with the Atlantis in terms of it being a really nice sounding synthesizer voice. I also know Milo Melodies uses it an awful lot in his set, and I've always been impressed by that. There's another part of me which goes, well, it's kind of cheating, though, isn't it? Because it's got a whole synth voice. It's got everything you need built into the one module, which doesn't feel proper modular, does it? Really? Does it? Well, yeah. I mean, who cares ultimately? Anyway, they've got a new version, it's got the X on the end, and it's got 2 oscillators this time. So you can do complex oscillator stuff of FM and cross modulation. It's through 0, so it's nice and melodic in that regard. You can create all sorts of different things between these things coming in. You've now got 2 modulation buses, which is essentially 2 LFOs, but they're not necessarily LFOs. They can also be other things routing to each other. So it's a modulation bus rather than just an LFO. Okay, keep up. Anything else? No, that's probably it. But hey, it's an updated version on their flagship voice, if you like, for Eurorack. Looks amazing, sounds fantastic. What else could you really need from a synthesizer voice? It's hardly any bigger, even though they've got twice the sonic potential inside. So yeah, a good solid thing from Intellijel. Something a little bit different from GliGli, or it could be GliGli, or GliGli. Who knows? It's the Overcycle. Great name for something. I'm not entirely sure what, but it is a great name, and we're going to go with that. It's a less than inspiring looking box with an enormous screen with text on it, which just makes my heart go, ooh. There are knobs though. Great. Are they multifunction knobs? Oh yes, they are. They could be anything at any time. You have no idea. You have to refer back to the screen again. Anyway, this has taken years and years and years of development, and it's based on, What's it based on? It's a 6-voice hybrid digital synthesizer in that it uses 2 digital oscillators that pull wavefroms from all sorts of places, including the Prophet VS, and then runs it all the way through an analog filter in VCA. The filters come from the PPG Wave, so it's full of this idea of legacy. So kind of Prophet VS waveforms and other interesting and unique waveforms for the oscillators, and each oscillator can have different ones, so you can have these competing waveforms forming your ultimate waveform soundy thing. And then the filters come from the PPG Wave, so it's creating this, or it's really sort of tapping into some kind of legacy of synthesizer sound within a very compact desktop box. The interface, I mean, you know, knobs are great, screen not so much. And watching the demo, there's a lot of screen and button action. There's a whole keypad of stuff over here. I mean, at one time, I suppose that was the way we did things. Synthesizers, control panels, bits and pieces like that. But it doesn't thrill me, I have to say, although, on the other hand, it sounded really interesting. Noise Engineering have a generative sequencer out. And it's not just one. Well, it's one module, but it's 4 channels of generative sequencing. Now, this is probably some kind of shift register thing like the Buchla Source of Uncertainty, but with 4 of them packed into a single interesting modulatable, push-aroundable module. Lots of stuff going on in this. Lots of stuff. I don't know if I know anything about it. It's got quantization inside as well. So, I mean, I think this is increasingly important, having sequencers that have quantization built in. And it's creeping up all over the place. It must have become simpler to put that in. There must be a chip or something that people are starting to use that doesn't have to make the module any bigger or make it any more complex on the front end. Because having that quantization built in, it just makes all our lives easier, you know. So that's a great thing to see. Noise engineering modules tend to be complex, particularly on the front panel. They look a little bit intimidating. But with a bit of luck, a bit of wrangling, could be generating all sorts of things for you. You don't need to do it. You don't need to lift a finger. Do you see what I mean about technology and music and how we give ourselves awesome abilities through these technological tools that then also take away from our opportunity to learn how to program a decent sequence. Generative versus intentional. It's already too late, isn't it? The Omnitone Roscoe P. Coltrane. This is not the Sheriff from Dukes of Hazzard. This is some kind of oscillator. An oscillator that has a triplet timbrin. It has almost infinite waveforms. All waveform possibilities. It generates its own digital waveforms by choosing points or something. So you have like a basic waveform. You're throwing a load of points and that waveform like stretches itself around these points and then gives you something a bit more unique. It also has formant, shaping within there and harmonics that you can add that bring further things to light. A bit like that RYK Elgo I've been playing with. Still yet to review, coming soon. But I love that just that idea of dialing in those extra sounds to then filter them away with a filter, so you get this shifting tone. But it's an interesting looking module, quite unique to some degree. I like the idea that you can just keep adding to it, poking at it, reshaping to get this almost completely infinite line of interesting waveforms out. So I think that deserves a little bit more of my attention. So Omnitone, if you're out there and you fancy sending me one so I can give it a bit of a play, that would be awesome. This is from Giorgio San Cristoforo. He's our favourite programmer, I think, who produces bizarre, strange, wonderfully intense desktop synthesizers. So rather than it just being a plug-in or some other piece of crap like that, no, these tend to be machines that you run on your desktop that are self-contained and generate all sorts of weird and strange and interesting things. This latest one, which is called Creature from the id or Creature from the ID. Creature from the id? Do they mean? I don't know. It could be more interesting than I think, perhaps. Anyway, this is essentially a Krell generator. So you have this fabulous interface of these fabulous voices and bits and pieces that are going around the place that are all going to be modulating into each other. And you can encourage it to start to generate in what we call a Krell kind of way, which is this sort of cascading, rolling, self-generating sense of movement and sequence and melody that's ebbing and flowing and waving into itself, because it's sort of self-modulating itself out into things, and then that modulation bends and folds and returns itself to somewhere else. It's a really interesting exercise in patching modular together, and Giorgio's been doing it within a nice, interesting, playful piece of software. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. The CubuSynth ConseQuencer. This looks great. This is like sort of a cross between a few different things. It's a wide 16-step, I think, sequencer with sliders. I was a fan of sequencer with sliders. You can get your notes in there. But it has qualities like the M185 where you have different gate modes. So gates will either just go along, or they might double or ratchet or triple it or go backwards on themselves. You've got a sense of probability per step and interesting occurrences and events happening per step that you can control in two different ways, in two different directions. I don't know why it's two different directions. In lots of different directions all at once. I would say it has touch controls which allow you to fire off different steps and recreate orders and all sorts of stuff. It looks really interesting. It's a sort of sequencer you could play as well as sequence, that sort of thing. This is the Comper from NOH Modular, or NOH Modular. And it's it's a pattern-based generator of stuff. So if you've got their pianist like I do here, which is fabulous, review will be coming in the next 2 years. I'll be doing a review of this, most definitely. You can write that down. I'll be certain of that. The pianist generates chords. It has like 8 outputs for you to run it into different voices to generate entire chordal arrangements. It's very, very fascinating. Now, what the Comper does is generate step patterns in order to run that sort of thing. More than that sort of thing. Now, NOH Modular are very much into their jazz, and the sort of chordal structures you get out of the pianist follow that idea, and the Comper pushes the rhythms of that. So built into the Comper is a whole bunch of jazz styles, jazz-inspired styles, Latin styles, samba styles, bits and pieces like that. These interesting rhythms and grooves, and it kicks them out in order to trigger the chord to start with through something like that. But it can also kick out an accompaniment of bass line to run another synth somewhere else, which is going to be complementary to the first bit. And also it runs out a kind of a bit of a percussive line as well, I think. So in some ways it's like an entire accompaniment section. So triggering, it's not making the chords, it's not doing the chord structure or progression, it's tapping out the rhythm that you would play them at on a piano. So that, a bass line and an eighth sort of thing going along with it, sounds like a fascinating combination of stuff. An interesting way, because we're always finding these rhythms when we're trying to sequence something, when we're trying to trigger something. We use triggers from all over the place. I love that about modular, and that you don't have to be using the note on event to trigger something. You can have something playing a tune and have it triggered completely differently. I think that's one of my favourite things within modular. And so this is interesting that it invites particular rhythms that we're familiar with. So rather than trying to find them, trying to program them, it brings them in. Again, here we go, this ease of use that stops me having to employ the guy who understands how to program a Brazilian rhythm. Oh dear. But it's full of swing, it's full of jazz, it's full of humanization, and looks like a lot of fun to bring to your modular. The Etna from Patching Panda. Mount Etna, perhaps? Volcanic, is it? Could be. But this is 3 channels of filtering with snapshots, essentially. I think there's a heck of a lot more to it than that, as there always is with a Patching Panda module. Complexity is something that they really embrace. But as I understand it, you've got 3 inputs, 3 outputs and a mix output. You can put 3 signals in. You've then got this dial in the middle with which to essentially save the settings. So you put it how you like it, and then save it on one of the 8 slots on this dial, and then put it how you like it, save another one, put it how you like it, and then you can morph between them. So you have this wonderful filtering experience that you really enjoy in this sort of way, and then you can drop it to something else, and it all moves to that rather than you just having to repatch something or redo something. So it's a great idea, and certainly gives you a very creative use of different filters within that context. There's also a single filter frequency dial, so you can turn everything down all at once, which will certainly be useful, so that when you're snapshotting, it's not going to necessarily be this massive change. You can keep things a little bit more under control. Very interesting though. This is a colourful thing that caught my eye. It's a 3x4 matrix of touch pads, should we call them, in a URAC module, and it's designed to be a touch controller, an arpeggiator, and something else. What else was it? Oh yes, and a sequencer. Those sorts of things. So you get your fingers in there, you can twiddle stuff about, you can play stuff, but you can also then hold to arpeggiate, or you can type in a bit of a sequencer and have that going on. Or it could of course be a generator of modulation that you're poking away into something. It looks really, really neat. It looks very clever and simple. You know, sometimes a screen is necessary, and I think that can be okay. It's the sort of thing that looks, it's very, very open. So when you're trying to get into there to control something, there's room for your fingers, there's room for performance, not trying to twiddle in a whole bunch of knobs. So, yeah, I think that looks quite nice. I'm going to go and learn more about it. ST Modular tends to release about 14 modules a week. It's just phenomenal. But this is a big thing. It's called the KraKong, or KraKong maybe. It's a dual oscillator generative synthesizer. A lot of generative stuff about at the moment, I have to say. That uses a shift register sequencer generator for both voices. This is a huge, wide thing. I mean, the interesting thing with ST Modular is that he doesn't make them. He designs them, puts one together, prototypes it, and then they all become DIY. So he prints out a bunch of front panels and PCBs and lets everybody else actually put them together, which is no bad idea. I mean, that's why he has all this time to keep coming up with new modules, because he's not spending his weekends having to solder everything together. It's also interesting that the KraKong is very, very similar to the secret thing I'm not allowed to tell you about. I've been playing with all week, which is odd. But this thing looks amazing. It's super wide. I mean, a proper, desktop-sized synthesizer that's doubled up one side. It's like there's 2 layers or 2 synthesizers. An oscillator on each side, a shift registering sequencer on either side. You've got ring modulation, you've got cross modulation, FM modulation, through 0 bits and pieces going all over the place. You've got 1 filter, but 2 ways of sequencing that, I think. You've got a couple of decay envelopes, you've got modulation, all sorts of surprisingly familiar bits and pieces, I have to say. But you've got a whole bunch of waveforms, stuff going on, interesting sequencing modulation, and it just looks the business. It really does produce extraordinary bits of gear, this guy. Percussa produced this extraordinary ESSP, I think it's called, massive URAC module that's packed full of a digital engine of algorithmic extraordinariness. And they have a smaller one. They've squatted it down in something called the XMX, which is great. It has nearly all the same algorithms as the big one. So you've got oscillators, modulators, recorders, samplers, whole patchable networks of modular synthesizers built into the entire thing, so you can have an entire modular synth within here, which is then acting just purely as a module within your system. It's got effects, it's got reverbs, it's got all sorts of stuff. It's your multifunctional, multi-purpose, digital, menu-driven module, but it's a really nice piece of work. Beautiful dials and knobs on it, beautifully laid out. A really nice piece of work if you want to spend your life navigating through menus and understanding all of that stuff. It's a bit like our friend the Disting, but with less algorithms, I suppose, less things to do, but a larger interface in which to enjoy it. I've just got poked by HEX Haus saying, hey, look, we do these things. Would you like to try them out? So they're going to send me a few, I think. Actually, have I responded to their email? Better go and do that after this. Anyway, they are a company that's building little sort of handheld and desktop bits and pieces. There's a delay and effects module. There's a dual filter, which is interesting. And there's a little digital polyphonic synthesizer. And they're all interesting shapes. The synth's got touch pad, metal blobs, metal... You know what I mean, touch plates, that's the word, touch plate kind of control over it, and all sorts of things going on. Why they didn't go for Eurorack, I don't know. That's an interesting question I'm going to have to ask them. I think perhaps there's an element of making things hard when it goes into Eurorack, because you need the case and you need the power supply, and there's all that sort of rigmarole going on in getting that right. Whereas with these little handheld devices, quite naked and PCB based, you've just got to use a little bit of USB power and off you go. You know, and perhaps that is an easier, more straightforward approach. And of course, it means that people who have this gear can use it, but also people who have other desktop synths can use it as well. So yeah, HEX Haus. I'm looking forward to giving those a bit of a fiddle. The Zeptocore came out not this month, perhaps the month before, but I didn't notice it. Did you notice it? I don't know. Anyway, I've noticed the new thing that they've just added to it, which is simply fantastic. The Zeptocore in itself is a pocket operator style thing, where it's essentially a sampler. So you've got, like I say, a pocket operator size kind of device, and it has a couple of knobs at the top and a whole bunch of buttons. You sample into it, or it has samples on its SD card, and you splat them across the buttons, and you tap the buttons and you play the samples. You can also sequence, you can add effects, you know, there's different modes you can hold in order to do different things of the samples that are playing back. Great, a lot of fun, instant, off you go, samples on the go, anywhere you like. Fantastic. Now, they've just released a new enclosure for it, or rather they're prototyping a new enclosure for it. Its availability is a little bit unclear at this time. And they've now called it the Zeptocade, because that's kind of what it is. So it's larger than you think, I think. It's got a little Zeptocore up in the corner, and then it just has this mass of arcade buttons where you can smash into those in order to launch your samples. They all light up. It's got 8 additional knobs for filtering and effects and other parameter changes. And it just looks fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Such a joyful, extraordinary, exciting, mashable, bashable sampling box. The Zeptocade. FlatSix have a new version of their sleight of hand module. What am I talking about? I'm talking about this, which you can't see from over here. But sleight of hand, I've got one here, right, is this 1U, fabulous 1U, 1 octave keyboard. It's a piano keyboard. Sleight of hand, it's great. You plug it into things, you can play it like a keyboard, or you can use it to transpose. I use it a lot with the Octone, for instance. I wire that in and can change the key of the sequence. Quite brilliant. Now there's a new firmware coming along from FlatSix called the ARP of Darkness, which is a great name, and it turns it into an arpeggiator. So rather than just playing individual notes, I can hold a bunch of notes and it will start arpeggiating. You've got different patterns, different numbers of notes, all through the same interface. And I've been looking at it going, well, how did he do that? Because it's really very simple. I mean, you've got just the buttons for your keyboard, plus octave up and down, and you've got trigger and gate out, and a knob which says glide. So he's using the entire same interface in order to make it do more. And he has extra plans as well to do more with it in the future. He's sending me one over. I mean, it's exactly the same as a sleight of hand, so it only really needs a firmware update, but he's also got a new front panel for it just to show what everything does. So I'm going to give that a go. I've had this sort of knocking around for a little while, thinking, yeah, I definitely should do a video on it, because it's interesting and different and offers a number of different solutions in different sorts of places. But when the ARP of Darkness turns up, I will endeavour to put both of them together to bring some badly needed mayhem to my modular. And finally this month I just want to give a bit of a shout out to Tim Exile, who's gone through a lot of trouble lately. He's been suffering from some terrible cancer and some terrible operations in order to remove it, and he's in recovery, I believe, and because of his illness, because of all of this, then his company Endless has had to shut, which is really very, very sad. Endless is this extraordinary community of live performance and collaboration that's he was absolutely the heart and soul of, and he's brought a lot of musicians and a whole community of people together around the software tools that he's produced. Just fantastic. And he's a lovely bloke as well, and it's very sad to see that that's had to close. There's no way of keeping that going. But the flip side is that people have been supporting him, and many of us in the community have been sharing his details and his situation so that people can donate and help support both Tim through his recovery, but also the staff and people at Endless, so that they can have a little bit of a buffer as they try to find other things to do. Apparently there was a plan for someone to buy it out, but unfortunately that fell through, so it just all sort of fell apart, which is terribly, terribly sad. But Tim, if you're out there, all the best. We're thinking of you. Wish you all the best in your recovery. Hope you do all right, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Right, that's it. That'll do. That will have to do you. As I say, I'm losing it. I'm losing it with the builders today. So yeah, it's been one of those days. It's been one of those weeks. But hey, why don't we get together on Sunday night, have a beer, and just try to forget all about it? That sounds like a plan to me. I can get behind that, I think. So yeah, we'll aim for a live stream Sunday night. I mean, that assumes that I can edit this down in time, because it's already far too late on Friday, because like I say, I've just been so flipping busy that I haven't had a chance to get this done. But hopefully I can get this out here on Saturday so that you'll know that there's a live stream on Sunday. We can get together and just talk about stuff. There's something that I would like to play with on Sunday, and that's this here. This has been sat wrapped on my floor for about a month. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Just at the moment, I can't quite articulate how busy I am at the moment. It's really, really weird, but good and bad all at the same time. I just end up feeling completely like I'm letting everybody down all at once, which is a great place to be. But I'm soldiering on, just trying to get through everything as I can. So Sunday night, let's play with this. This is the telepathy bundle from Dreadbox. You've got 6 telepathy modules, each one is a synth voice. So we're looking at polyphony going through psychosis, which kind of brings it all together. So that'll be interesting. Gives an opportunity to play with a pianist again, see if I can stuff some chords into here. That might be interesting. I've also got the crazy tetrachords here, which would be good to run with it. So that's bringing a whole number of things together in one hit, which is good. That's good. That's very, very good. I like that. So come along on Sunday night, 8 o'clock. Use your time, bring a beer, and we'll have a bit of a chat, have a chinwag, relax, unwind, have a bit of a play with this. With a bit of luck, see how that goes. Yeah, that sounds good. Otherwise, I've got so much stuff coming up you won't believe, but also so much work to do that I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to do any more videos. So we're gonna have to see. But there's all sorts of things coming up. Very exciting stuff. Just trying to get to it all. Living the dream. So yeah, well, there we go. That's this month's bits and bobs, bits and pieces. I hope to see you Sunday, and in the meantime, go make some tunes.